As long as the Matrix exists, the human race will never be free.
I'd recently been researching chemtrails and a link to HARP. My research led me down many roads and left me with many pieces of a very large and complex puzzle. Unfortunately, one of the pieces concerned the use of ELF waves that could be literally beamed directly into our heads, causing us to change our emotions. Certain frequencies caused a depressive state, others a feeling of well-being, to higher frequencies that caused feelings of heightened aggression. It may all sound a bit like science fiction, but the harsh and undeniable reality is that this technology is here now. The following film shows testimony from many individuals who believe they are being targeted by gang stalkers. These people are termed as TIs, targeted individuals. It's time to wake up and fight these Malthusian eugenicists who are hell-bent on not just controlling the world with their new world order, but are now targeting your minds.
All right, here's that cell phone story you've been waiting for. Cell phone users beware, Big Brother may be listening. The Federal Bureau of Investigation can now hear everything you say, even when the cell phone is turned off. I know it sounds kind of out there, but using your phone's tracking device, authorities can now activate the microphone inside the dreaded thing, allowing them to eavesdrop on you and your conversations.
They told the American people the air was safe to breathe.
I will promise you this, that if we have not gotten our troops out by the time I am president, it is the first thing I will do. I will get our troops home. We will bring an end to this war. You can take that to the bank.
Meanwhile, President Obama has ordered 17,000 more American troops to Afghanistan. It's the first stage of a build-up that will eventually see 60,000 U.S. troops deployed to the country.
The U.S. president has revealed his plan for Afghanistan, escalating the war at the fastest possible pace.
It is in our vital national interest to send an additional 30,000 U.S. troops to Afghanistan.
Congress shall now vote for approval of H.R. 8791, the Homeland Terrorism Preparedness Bill. Said bill requests emergency response funding up to and including, I'm sorry, this section is classified.
It's a bird, it's a plane, it's bulletproof skin, created from genetically engineered spider milk? What?
New to not, police call it bullying on steroids. We're talking about gang stalking.
I am a targeted individual, and I am being stalked and harassed by different people everywhere I go.
All right, scientists over in Japan have developed new technology that will allow them to see inside your mind.
I'm here tonight to spread awareness about telepathic impersonation technology.
Yes, it sounds like a horror movie. Innocent families terrorized in their own homes by a group of anonymous hackers.
Yeah, this is an incredible story. Imagine somebody hearing everything that you say, seeing everything that you do, and using that information to threaten your children's lives.
Nothing I did in Iraq was courageous. I brought fear into people's homes. I traveled with a 50 caliber weapon every single day and slept with a pistol underneath my pillow. Tell me what is so courageous about that.
Dollars to prepare for a national level terrorist attack and or attack from classified.
Hey, Martha, remember when zombies became immortalized in the movie Night of the Living Dead? Well, now the CDC has kind of resurrected zombies, no pun intended, to try and educate people about diseases and disasters. The CDC offering tips on how to avoid a zombie apocalypse.
Well, the state has laws against stalking on the books, making it a felony.
But what if police don't recognize it? And what if it's a complete stranger who's bothering you?
I don't know if everybody out there is familiar with the term COINTELPRO or gang stalking, but I definitely am a victim. If you get a chance, check out some of the websites on Google that you can find. There aren't many though because they get disappeared daily.
Question about some of the technology that you're developing to fight the war on terror, specifically directed
energy and high-powered microwave technology. When do you envision that you can weaponize that type of technology?
Goodness. It is in, for the most part, the kinds of things you're talking about are in varying early stages. Do you have anything you'd add?
I don't think I would add much. I think they are in early stages and probably not ready for employment at this point.
But you sound like you're willing to experiment with it.
I think that's the point, and I think, and we have, I think, from the beginning of this conflict, I think General Franks has been very open to looking at new things if there are new things available, and has been willing to put them into the fight.
This subject is important because a lot of people are vulnerable to this and have no idea this technology exists.
I know for a fact that somebody was influencing my dreams last year in October because they were zapping my body at the same time that they would, like, when I was sleeping, when I go to sleep at night, they would, like, send me an image and then they'd zap my body to like, coincide with the image. So I knew somebody was using technology against.
After 4 months of harassing phone calls, Heather and Courtney Kuykendall were afraid to answer their cell phones. You are so dead. The graphic, violent threats came at all hours, forcing the family to change their cell phone numbers. But even that didn't work.
The YouTube video under review by the Phoenix Police Department is just over 3 minutes long, but the police takedown of a 15-year-old girl is over in seconds. The powerful impact of this quick hit has prompted an internal investigation.
And I tried hard to be proud of my service, but all I could feel was shame. And racism could no longer mask the reality of the occupation. These were people, these were human beings. I've since been plagued by guilt anytime I see an elderly man, like the one who couldn't walk, who we rolled onto a stretcher and told the Iraqi police to take him away.
Funding for first responder personnel and vehicles would be doubled if said attack leads to more than 80% of national population being affected by classified.
The covert crimes, the family says, include intense microwave radiation aimed at the house. That explains the metal panels.
I would say that since we've noticed the temperature difference in our house go down.
I want to tell you how I was selected as a targeted individual. My uncle, Colonel Benjamin Leach, USAF, was stationed in San Antonio, Texas. At the time, the Nazi scientists were brought to the U.S. by President Harry F. Truman. My uncle objected to the Manhattan Project. Therefore, his family was selected for experimentation.
William Walker Atkinson. This is a book that came out in 1908, Practical Mind Reading, a course of lessons on thought transference.
Certain brain patterns corresponds to certain thoughts, a dictionary of thinking.
And apparently this guy, William Walker Atkinson, is the guy who really popularized the idea of the law of attraction way back 100 years ago.
How did it start?
Well, it seemed to start with her cell phone, and it spread almost as a virus. It sent out text messages to about 25 contacts in her phone.
I feel guilt anytime I see a mother with her children, like the one who cried hysterically and screamed that we are worse than Saddam as we forced her from her home.
This funding shall commence in conjunction with the first attack on classified.
For the past 20 years, my wife Evie and I have been the victims of criminal activities perpetrated by a small network of individuals who are out to destroy us personally, professionally, and financially.
Hi, this is Sharonda Jackson. It's official. I've been a TI for a little over a year, and I'm getting death threats, so I just want everybody to pray for me. And always, if you're in this situation, number one is keep faith in Christ and hope. And that's it. Goodbye.
If we start at the back of the brain, we've switched off my visual cortex, so made me unable to see things. If we move a little bit forward in the brain, we've interfered with people's ability and my ability to see faces. A little bit further forward, we've interfered with the ability to perform action.
Because as a targeted individual and mind control victim, my mind is often tampered with and my memory at times controlled.
They said they were going, to rape her.
The Kuykendalls were featured on NBC's Today Show after anonymous stalkers literally took control of the family's cell phones and began following their every move.
Are you all right?
I feel guilt anytime I see a young girl, like the one I grabbed by the arm and dragged into the street.
Or the first large-scale outbreak of classified, dependent upon which comes first.
He said for the last year and a half, he's been systematically followed by a group of people. At one point, he said they climbed on his roof to harass him.
I am a victim of electromagnetic microwave frequency harassment. I am being physically tortured every day.
I am a victim of electronic torture, surveillance, and wiretapping.
It just felt like I was getting physically tortured, and I couldn't stop them.
Think of Guantanamo Bay and the question of interrogating terrorists. We can now, in the future, be able to think about reading a terrorist's mind without using coercive tactics.
If I've been tortured hundreds, maybe even thousands of times.
Because I knew I was being attacked. I mean, they were electrocuting me in my bed.
It quickly made me think of how CIA torture, they don't like to leave marks. They like to make it so there's no evidence, physical evidence that you were tortured.
When it got most scary for me, if I was in your family, is when it seemed like they're not only hacking into your conversations, they can see what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Tell me about the night you were all watching American Idol, like most families do in this country.
Right, yeah, we were sitting in our living room, and my husband was on his cell phone, and so the camera phone would have been facing the couch that I was sitting at with my two young children. My son was eating top ramen covered in a blanket.
The noodles.
Yeah. And they described the blanket my son was covered in. They said they wanted a bite of his top ramen, and they said what
scare the
they
heck
said
out of
the
you.
color of my 10-year-old daughter's shirt, and they even said what it said, like a Roxy shirt, and told my husband to stop writing on the yellow legal pad.
The whole time. Turn on your stomach now. Don't move. Yeah, it is. We were told we were fighting terrorists. The real terrorist was me, and the real terrorism is this occupation.
Civilian and military units shall be trained in containment and combat of classified, including irradiated classified, with possibility of classified airborne, classified flesh-eating, classified, and or all of the above, in such event as classified spewing, classified escape, are released or otherwise become uncontrollable.
Well, we genetically engineered the goats so that they produce the spider silk protein in their milk.
Cynthia Verbeff is moving. Her home, she says, has become a house of horrors. She suffered months of oddness.
Coming in through the front door, and I touch the doorknob and it just falls into pieces.
Lights left on, doors open, furniture moved, her clothes dryer disassembled. Her friends say they noticed the strange happenings. They tell the I-Team they even witnessed a gas oven left turned on.
I'm a very patriotic person, always have been, tried to follow the law, have been in public service for many years, and I have reason to believe that I fell prey to a large agency who just didn't like me.
We've interfered with the ability to speak.
London Bridge is falling down.
You think of something you can do, and we've basically interfered with it with this machine.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
So what's the problem?
I don't know.
Well, a very, very heavy debatation tonight. We had a very Darrison. Let's go to Terrace Chase and look for the bit.
Police call this a, quote, impact push. But critics, including this retired law enforcement officer, call the video and use of force disturbing.
Air Force units may also be directed to combat said classified due to their enormous size and otherworldly strength. Should event occur in urban areas? Jesus. That's classified.
Here's the tips. Check out tip number 1. Identify the types of emergencies that are possible in your area. Besides a zombie apocalypse, this may include floods, tornadoes, or earthquakes.
Verbeth believes she's being targeted.
Everything. They just went through everything.
But sheriff's detectives had little to go on because the vandals, though often destructive, stole nothing. Even from her portable safe drilled into and torn apart, the contents, the jewelry, remained untouched.
Well, my apartment was broken into. Nothing was really taken but some little items and personal letters I had written to myself.
President Lyndon B. Johnson had on his board of science advisors geophysicist J.F. McDonald, who wrote, quote, "One could develop a system that would seriously impair the brain performance of very large populations in selected regions over an extended period."
Wisconsin is the latest state, including Iowa, Kansas, Maine, Ohio, and Wyoming, to join Florida's suit. The states claiming the exorcist saw unto Sracho and play Bringritz by health urgent.
They're listening to us and recording us. We know that because they will record us and play it back as a voicemail.
So how is this possible? Just take a look at the internet. That's where you'll find the latest spy technology for cell phones. Marketers claim you can tap into someone's calls, read their text messages, and track their movements anywhere, anytime. They say you can catch a cheating spouse, protect your children, and hear what your boss is saying about you. And they'll never know because it's supposed to be completely invisible with absolutely no trace.
When I joined the military, I raised my hand and said that I would protect the Constitution of the United States and its people, and against foreign and domestic enemies. But guess what? I did not raise my hand to protect private companies.
Far surpassing our darkest nightmares. Should casualties exceed, classified body disposal actions shall be halted and associated resources shall be reallocated to classified underground, classified protected birthing centers. A new Bill of Rights shall be drafted and approved by classified.
Today, the D'Souza family tried to explain to us why they did it with binders of data and electronic measuring devices, which they prove their neighbors are bombarding them with microwaves and other kinds of radiation.
Hi, my name is Brenda Barrett-Crow. I'm an electronic harassment and surveillance targeted individual.
The CIA's program in experimental mind control became known as MK Ultra.
MK Ultra was a government program to see whether, through various different techniques, people could be made to do things which they wouldn't normally do.
Now, Defense Minister McLeod did confirm today that more than 54 18 fighter jets are spending about as much as 20 and ready to assist the 100 deployed over the amount needed. Now, it did depend that how the NOLAN emerges our end, while the university or the UN mission as whole received support from all batteries in the hues of the Garbins of today. Excuse me. I'll hand it back to you.
My daughter was babysitting, and they called, and they knew the name of the little girl she was babysitting. They said her name.
There's a term, once a Marine, always a Marine, but there's also the term, eat the apple, F the core. I don't work for you no more.
Up until a year ago, Evie and I had never had any run-in with the law whatsoever. We are not criminals, nor are we fugitives from justice, nor are we crazy. We are simply artists and filmmakers who are being racketeered on.
Back when the stalking first started, when they were actually like physically doing, like you could see, like doing driving stuff, like talking about you when you're walking past them, talking about something you did that day when you happen to walk past them. Street theater, I think it's called.
In covertly recorded off-air transmissions from the Bush-Clinton presidential election campaign in the 1990s, we can see that Bill Clinton was nothing more than a puppet to the puppet masters which placed him in the White House. Bill Clinton's demeanor seems to be similar to a person who is under a hypnotic trance.
I'm sorry. I was in a trance.
Yeah, wipe the drool there.
This stuff's pretty creepy.
Yeah, exactly.
Rick Mislin is a former military intelligence officer who now runs the cyber forensics lab at Purdue University. He's examined thousands of cell phones and says spy software can now make even the most high-tech phone vulnerable.
I didn't see the girl resisting the officer. I didn't see where the officer gave the opportunity for her to comply with any orders. It was very troubling.
After the teen was thrust into the wall, for a moment she lies motionless on the ground while being handcuffed. Police say she wasn't hurt, but the video shows what appears to be a bloody wound on her head.
When are we going to realize that people fighting in Iraq against us, they're not terrorists, they're soldiers? What would we do if somebody invaded us? I know I will pick up my weapon and fight against them.
I want to be able to go to the tennis courts and play tennis or play ping pong without people following us everywhere. It's just nerve-wracking.
I mean, they've been harassing me for like over 15 years. Called I'm a targeted individual. It's like I don't know. I don't know who they are. I don't know why they're doing it. I haven't done anything to anybody.
But that's the worst part of it. If it was me, I would take action.
During the 1960s and 1970s, Dr. Andrea Puharich studied the impact ELF waves have on the brain. What he discovered was shocking. Dr. Puharich found that a 6.6 hertz ELF wave could cause depression. A 7.83 hertz ELF wave made a person feel good, producing an altered state. And a 10.80 hertz ELF wave could trigger riotous behavior.
Can we do any more? Let me do some more. Let me do some more. I'll do some more for you. Caught. We've done all kind of today.
Times for the different
But I
girls.
didn't think that technology existed.
Well,
I didn't know
either.
that
I had no
the
idea.
camera phone would come on and show the room. Robert, does that exist?
The technology certainly does exist that could monitor your activities via your cellular phone. Absolutely.
That man just came out of a wheelchair. They fucked him up for real. Come on, now you're getting loud. Move on, sir. Get loud.
I mean, I've heard it argued, and argued successfully, that our society runs on war. You know, it runs on the domination of the other parts of the world. And literally, that's the only way you can control a gigantic chunk of the globe. You have to keep everybody down.
Tip number 2, pick a meeting place for your family to regroup in case zombies invade your home. These are actual tips, by the way.
FEB says all these happenings culminated in an assault. The 39-year-old believes someone drugged the food in her home and returned later to rape her.
I know something happened to me because a woman knows.
She filed a report and was briefly hospitalized with signs of sexual assault.
As a child, I was subjected to mind control experimentation that is continuing today.
Cheryl believes she became a targeted individual, a TI, in the 1980s when she walked into an Army recruiting office to see if she qualified for college tuition money. She decided not to enlist. And that's when she claims the strange mind control phenomenon began.
The hearing of the voices, the manipulation of all your electrical equipment, the clicks on the phone, the reading your thoughts, the reading your mind, seeing what you're seeing.
They can control my eyebrows, my face, my tone of voice, and they often do.
They are literally able to remote control my son right now.
Imagine being able to hear something without necessarily hearing it, since, someone's speaking to you, where it's barely a whisper, it's almost a whisper. They've fluctuated between that and a louder noise over the last couple of days.
I think a lot of people think their cell phone calls are very secure. Our privacy isn't always what we think it is.
And you don't have to take his word for it. Just ask Cindy Hebert.
Here's an update for Rich's airport discovery.
Cindy is a producer at Channel 13, and with her permission, I've installed spy software onto her cell phone.
Hi, it's me. What are you doing?
While Cindy's at home making phone calls to her family.
Have you guys thought any more about
coming through here to Indianapolis to Florida? Yeah, it'll be a long time.
I'm outside on my cell phone listening to the whole conversation.
Whenever you make it through, we'll be here.
That young man has mental issues. He's mentally retarded, sir. Just need to let you know. We got a video recorded that he had his hands up.
Our enemy is not 5,000 miles away. They are right here at home. If we organize and fight with our sisters and brothers, we can stop this war, we can stop this government, and we can create a better world.
От його буде зима, правда?
The D'Souza family includes 2 college-educated young women who say scientific instruments prove they are under attack.
The trajectories we've tracked, it's been coming from the neighbors. First, you're skeptical, but we've tracked our health, the temperature in the home. We've had blanks that are supposed to reflect microradiation and radar. They're radar reflective material, and they've burned.
Or at one point where it sounded like it was coming from outside or somewhere in another room. Now it sounds more internal, but they were loud for that caliber of sound, if you will, to being really low key, where it was almost like I was being conditioned to hear them.
According to this article in the Washington Post magazine, in 1994, the Air Force Research Laboratory carried out experiments where scientists used technology to transmit phrases into the heads of human subjects. How? By burying subliminal messages in microwaves and beaming them into a person's head.
What? For dog drop it. Go, man. He's on a power trip right now, so you might not want to mess with him. He's really on a power trip.
The society is so greedy, we're willing to go to war. We're willing to go places and send these big metal machines that kill people and fuck people up just so we can make more money.
We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it.
How many people do you know personally who have died suddenly and mysteriously in the past 5 years? I have personally known 8 actors, all of whom I have worked with and was close to. Heath Ledger, Chris Penn, David Carradine among them. I believe these actors were whacked, and I believe that many others, such as Britney Spears, Lindsay Lohan, and Mel Gibson, are being played to get at their money.
I served as the mayor pro tem of that city for 14 years. During that time, I reported political corruption, police brutality, and the molestation of young children that went unpunished and unprosecuted. For these things, I became a targeted individual.
The Air Force denies it's working on one. But patent number 6470214, issued on October 22nd, 2002, says otherwise. The patent title, Method and Device for Implementing the Radio Frequency Hearing Effect. Patent holder, the U.S. Air Force.
They zap your body at the same time a lot of times, or they'll talk in your head while you're sleeping. Like, you might halfway wake up and hear somebody talking in your head, but then once you wake up, you don't hear it anymore.
And there's more. Every time Cindy makes or receives a call,
Eyewitness News, this is Cindy.
my cell phone lets me know. It's a text message telling me she's on the phone so I can call in and listen. On my computer, I also get a copy of her text messages. I can see the phone numbers of all her incoming and outgoing calls, and no matter where Cindy is with her cell phone, I get constant satellite updates on her location. I can literally track Cindy anywhere she goes. And I'm just getting started.
He's retarded, sir. He's retarded. Listen to what I have to say. If you're retarded, you wouldn't be listening to him either. Straight out to the side. Don't get up. Don't get up.
And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control.
Dr. Hall says what Verveff describes is known as gang stalking. Indeed, he writes about it in his book, A New Breed, Satellite Terrorism in America.
That it's time now that people in America and all over the world become more aware of the many thousands, if not larger numbers of victims of people that have been used in mind control experimentation, as well as being used within our own government and other governments as operatives that have been under mind control, used as a slave labor force without their own knowledge or awareness.
One scary possibility that we would have to guard against is that is it possible that hackers of the future could somehow manage to peek inside our own heads?
There may be reason to be concerned.
No, electronic harassment as a whole with this surveillance is electronic surveillance. Turns the target, like myself, into a walking, talking piece of surveillance equipment. They have the ability to see through my eyes in real time, hear through my ears, everything that's said.
It's interesting because it would be almost a perfect way to implement something known as man-machine interface. If you can stimulate the brain, you can stimulate vision, you can stimulate auditory cortex, you can stimulate movement, you can stimulate the passions, you can stimulate desires, you can basically address your brain directly.
This is another message they got about killing your pets. Listen to this.
That's not right. Yeah, he had his hands up, and he has mental problems. He has mental problems.
You can tell that. You look at him. I don't even know it. That's not right.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day.
Tip number 3, plan your evacuation route, because when zombies are hungry, they won't stop until they get food, like your brains, which means you need to get out of town fast.
If people can imagine one night that they couldn't sleep well and they woke up totally just exhausted, that's what we were experiencing every day.
The father says since 9/11, his family has become a target because he is originally from Pakistan.
And to be treated like this, like I'm a non-citizen, it hurts.
In the end, you will find people that are targeted are always whistleblowers.
Documents surrounding the development of this secret weapon are classified. But what is known is that microwaves carry energy. When a microwave pulse is absorbed by our body, this energy is converted to heat, causing the tissue to expand slightly and then contract when it cools. If the microwave were aimed at our head, this expansion and contraction would be heard as a clicking sound that could be encoded into words.
Because it's something with the frequencies, your brain frequencies, while you're asleep are different from your brain frequencies while you're awake. And somehow they're able to send information, just like you send information to a television, just like you send information to a cell phone. They're also able to send information to your brain, but your brain has to be at a certain frequency in order to receive. Get what I'm saying?
Even if her cell phone is just sitting on a table or attached to her purse, I can activate the speaker on that phone and secretly listen in.
So what are the rules for listening in?
That means while Cindy is meeting with our station attorney up on the 36th floor of that downtown building,
And does their intent matter?
I can hear their conversation even though I'm 4 miles away. I'm eavesdropping on them from the city's north side. And I can hear every word.
Or today, yeah, as long as you can do all those kind of things, you can use that as evidence.
Assault on a police officer. Assault on a police officer.
And there is, they follow us. They tail us. They tag our cell phone. They hack our computer. We can't send email. We make a call, and right in the middle of the call, the whole system will shut.
I do have physical stalkers still, and I've been completely surrounded for about the last 6 years that I know of. I've been forced to move about 7 times.
According to this passage in the patent documents, this device can beam energy waves that can be, quote, converted to nerve signals which are sent to the brain, thereby enabling intelligible speech to be perceived by the brain. The result? The person hears voices that aren't there.
And I do hear the voices in my head.
Still hearing the fucking voices pretty much all the time.
I get plumpy on my parents. They're 70. Those are their animals, and they threaten to know where they live and kill my parents' animals. My dad's in front of the Tacoma police station talking into his phone. Yeah, that looks crazy. But he said, if you can hear us, you big toad, we're after you now. The police are on it, FBI's on it, Homeland Security. They called back a minute later and said, yeah, we can hear you, you big toad.
He's in a wheelchair. Always in a wheelchair. He lives on this block. What is going on?
This isn't stalking done by a former spouse or former boyfriend or someone that you know that's disgruntled at you, but stalking that's being done by total strangers in an organized fashion.
Definitely do try and get me to commit suicide and retaliate so that they could get the upper hand.
My abusers are trying to force me to commit suicide.
They do want me to commit suicide. There's absolutely no question about that.
They want you to commit suicide, or they want to incarcerate you.
So, how can you protect yourself? Well, for starters, don't just leave your cell phone lying around where anyone can get to it. Install a password on here to prevent others from accessing your phone. And when you're not using it, go ahead and turn it off and actually take out the battery. We've got more tips for you at WTHR.com.
What's happening is when they're burning through it.
The family says it will comply, but will continue living under thermal blankets inside the house.
The best we could do is to protect ourselves as a shield, to protect against radiation, because microwave radiation is reflected off of aluminum, so it's a protective measure.
I heard an engineer said that aluminum was a deflector of heat, and so I put it on my head. It immediately had a cooling effect on my head.
This is like a hood from a jacket I bought that supposedly blocks EMF. LessEMF.com sells that. And I was trying a mixture of that with the space blanket hooked up to the jack. And I was
That's perfect.
In 1979, the Voyager spacecraft showed a perfect geometric form over the North Pole. In October 2006, the Cassini craft found that it is still there.
It makes me feel afraid.
At Brown University, they are working with tiny computer chips that can be implanted into the brain to transmit neuron impulses to a computer for mind-reading interpretation. It's like connecting your iPod to a computer and downloading music. Scientists can now connect your brain to a computer.
My niece's phone called 2 people. It rang out on speakerphone, called one person, and it then called another person. I saw it.
Possibly one of the reasons they do a lot of stuff in the beginning that's just crazy and traumatizing, all that, is so that at any point during the gang stalking, after you're trying to get back to, maybe you're getting used to it and you're trying to get back to your normal patterns, they can just interrupt the pattern by reminding you of some aspect of something they've already done to you to keep you back in their line of thinking and not the way that you want to go.
Reynolds Thomas Bryan, born 9/11/40.
So there's a strange motif of Mayan symbolism mixed in with this end of the world motif, which actually explains the purpose of Denver International Airport. Right here, this explains it. This is a place for the elites to escape from what this is.
If you look nationwide, almost everyone that complains of this eventually gets sent to a psychiatrist. The psychiatrists don't look into the technology. They don't do any research into whether or not any of this is possible.
The way it works is that the tiny chip he's holding in his hand can be implanted in a person's brain. The chip picks up electrical impulses, which specially designed software then interprets as the actions a person wants to perform. Essentially, the chip can read a person's thoughts.
Essentially, we are going to make wires that are smaller than the diameter of blood cells. And we're going to thread them up through the vascular system from a catheter that's been inserted in your leg all the way up into your brain, into the smallest capillaries, the smallest blood vessels there, where the electrodes can be very close to the nerve cells in your brain without requiring major surgery to open your skull up and shove the electrodes into the surface.
They say they still believe they are under attack, but say they're now looking into replacing the metal sheets with ordinary aluminum.
They have implanted a similar chip into the brain of a monkey. Out of its reach is a 30-pound mechanical arm, about 3 times the monkey's weight. The only thing connecting the two is the implant in the monkey's brain. The monkey will be offered food. The challenge, using only its thoughts, can the monkey control the mechanical arm to pick up the food?
Because it's something with the frequencies.
I mean, so I have seen things with my own eyes that other people might say are questionable, but I have seen it.
pole, there's a hexagonal feature, a 6-sided polygon that encircles the pole at about 78 degrees north latitude.
If this mind-control weapon exists, could this technology be deployed on a mass scale? There's speculation that the government already has.
I mean, this is literally almost a portrayal of the end of the earth.
It is, and the world will be destroyed by fire, and there it is. And look at who's going extinct here. It's not just animals.
It's people.
You could imagine a group of people doing a job, in the military, becoming continuously aware of their existence and what they're doing. So suddenly you have not a human, but a group of people that behave as a single entity. You could call this something like a wolf pack. You would have a collective consciousness, collective understanding. You would be basically a rather strange new device.
HAARP is a bank of 180 antennas, each as tall as a 7-story building, erected near Gakona, Alaska. The antennas emit extremely low-frequency waves, also known as ELF waves, into the upper atmosphere, which bounce back to Earth and allegedly provide advanced data for studying weather patterns.
Your brain frequencies while you're asleep are different from your brain frequencies while you're awake.
This is a breakthrough. So what you do is you actually send a certain number of them. You have a bundle, and then the bundle would be, the nanowires would be allowed to float into the bloodstream until they can go no further. At the moment we can wire a rat.
You'd have a signal that would hit the ionosphere, begin to pulse the energy into the ionosphere, and the ionosphere, this layer, would begin to pulse back. So it changes it from a direct current to an alternating current, sending back to the Earth in the ELF range, extremely low frequency range of 1 to 20 hertz. Those same frequencies, 1 to 20 hertz, happen to correlate with predominant brain frequencies in human beings.
But your brain has to be at a certain frequency in order to receive. Get what I'm saying?
National Security Agency, the NSA, visited us. And these guys they sort of have a mystique being members of the intelligence community. And, you know, the people who came are very smart. They're dressed in suits that cost more than I make in a year. I think some of their interest is potentially sinister. Potentially sinister.
If you go back to the work of Gordon Gay of McDonald in the 1970s, you'll find that he was talking about being able to modulate a signal into the ionosphere that would be able to return a signal that the human body would couple with, would lock onto, and begin to follow in a manner that would change the emotional state of people over a large geographic area.
Does HAARP fulfill McDonald's prophecy? Has the day of mass mind control arrived?
A breakthrough of collective.
Actually sinister.
A breakthrough of collective.
Actually sinister.
It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed.
I believe that Gandhi's views were the most enlightened of all the political men in our time. We should strive to do things in his spirit, not to use violence in fighting for our cause, but by non-participation in anything you believe is evil.
Having now reviewed the bill, I ask you to please cast your vote.
I see your dirty face, hide behind your collar. What is done in vain? Truth is hard to swallow, so you pray to God to justify the way you live a lie, live a lie, live a lie. And you take your time, and you do your crime. Well, you made your bed. Because when I arrive, I'll bring the fire, make you come alive. I can take you higher, what this is. For God, I must now remind you, let it rock, let it rock, let it rock. Now the son's disgraced, he who knew his father when he cursed his name, turned and chased the dollar, but it broke his heart, so he stuck his middle finger to the world, to the world, to the world. And you take your time, and you stand in line, where you'll get what's yours. I got mine. Because when I arrive, I'll bring the fire, make you come alive. I can take you higher, what this is. For God, I must now remind you, let it rock, let it rock, let it rock. Yeah, Wayne's World, Planet Rock, Penny's Drive, and the top. And she gon' rock till the camera stop. I sing about angels like Angel Eye, and Pay My Life, and Sam Die. and time around me, nagez-moi. I'm in here like, bitch, what's up? Mechanic, me, I can fix you up, I can dig you up, I can dig you down. Shout if we can go wherever, just pick a town. And my jewelry is louder than an engine sound. Big ass rocks like on the ground, dirty like socks that's on the ground. We say, because when I arrive, I'll bring the fire, make you come alive. I can take you higher, what the sense forgot. I must now remind you, let it rock, let it rock, let it rock. Because when I arrive, I'll bring the fire, make you come alive. I can take you higher, what the sense forgot. I must now remind you, let it rock, let it rock, let it rock. Just let it rock, let it rock, let it rock.
He is the one.